Hi, hello, and welcome to the Rangman Show. We have a really interesting guest today. He's an aerospace engineer. He's designed artworks. He's an Avgeek, so to speak. He designs aviation artwork. He's fired AK-47s in the Kalashnikov factory last year. He's designed a lot of artworks for Navy and Air Force. And his name is Angad Maolankar. Welcome to the podcast, Angad, and thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, good afternoon. Happy Republic Day to
Happy Republic Day.
Happy Republic Day, Angad. It's great to have you, man.
Yeah.
Till the time you're not firing AK-47s at us, we're happy.
Technically, that was an AK-203, which
my bad.
the Russian government has now sold to us. Yes.
You, looking at the fly pass today, I was just thinking about how I got to know you. I think sometime around last year, I came across your aviation art. And to begin with, I wasn't sure whether it was somebody from India or not, because that kind of stuff is not really done here. So just take us through how you started, what you started doing, and what was the motivation behind it.
So, okay, I will give you the actual story of the timeline of exactly how it all worked out. But primarily, one of the main motivations has always been when I was in college, because then you finally have your own hostel room and you can decorate it the way you want to. I wanted to put up a lot of aviation-related memorabilia and paraphernalia all over my room. Unfortunately, when I looked online, pretty much all you could find is either French aircraft that have been drawn by a French national, or American aircraft by an American national, or interestingly enough, there is a lot of really good Chinese art out there.
Okay.
But unfortunately, nothing that was India specific. So just before the pandemic really hit and lockdown really got started, I was actually in the middle of the process of becoming a commercial pilot. So once lockdown hit, that pretty much everything kind of slowed down and came to a stop. And then I was supposed to write my DGCA theory papers. That unfortunately also got pushed because of lockdown.
Pandemic,
so I just found myself with a lot of free time and nothing else to do. And I've always liked drawing and I've always liked aircraft. So I decided to combine the two and start drawing. And we recently moved on to, we got this new iPad. Like in the family, we got this new iPad, and that suddenly opens up this whole world of digital art, because drawing digitally versus making that artwork on paper are two, they couldn't be further apart. Even though they kind of have some commonality, they couldn't be further apart. I mean, just you have a backspace button on the computer. It saves you so much time.
Sure.
So I had got started with that. Sorry?
I'm saying we can safely say that your craft is to make aircraft art.
Yes. Aircraft specific, but I think art in general is, I would say that.
Before you dig in further, why art? I mean, keeping aircraft aside, what fascinates you about art? Could you spend some time on that?
Art has this amazing ability to push a subliminal message. Let me put it that way. It's people always like things that are cool and that pop and look nice. If you look for a lot of stuff on the internet, you'll find slightly grainy photos of aircraft, or photos that aren't particularly colorful or particularly interesting if you don't know what you're looking at. So if you make art and the background to the aircraft is pink or bright yellow or red, that truly catches someone's attention and it forces you to look at what you're looking at. So I think art has that ability. Plus, another reason why art is because it allows you to depict things that you just can't photograph. You just can't there is no other way to do it other than to art your way out of it.
Do you also think that the audiences are increasingly more receptive to a visual form of communication rather than content in, say, audio form or written form? And that's where also art plays a big role?
I am not really well positioned to speak about to talk about that, but yeah, I mean, definitely there is a in the age of social media and instant gratification, why would you want to read an article and then that article has talks about a lot of other various aspects and subsystems that you will then need to further read about? Then sometimes art is just easier. It's
No,
nice to
but
like scroll
it's
like
actually
snazzy.
true, Angad, because the thing is that I'm into digital marketing and we've increasingly seen that visual communication has a far harder hitting impact with the consumer as compared to audio or written content. So that's why anything which has a visual rendition to it is actually like gaining a lot of traction. So I'm glad that you're doing art because it'll definitely get you far more traction than me, who's a writer, so to speak. So I do digital marketing as well as a sports writer. But I've also seen that visuals appeal to a consumer far higher than content in any other form. So kudos there, man.
Thank you.
Talking about the visual format, like just adding to what Pranay said, uh, uh, I I've been always curious and extremely into everything that's related to Army and Air Force and Navy. And I think Angad knows from the conversation, kind of conversations I've had. I've picked his brain at 2 a.m. in the night on things like, "Yaar, मेरे को इसके बारे में और बताओ." And I've always been that way. But a lot of my friends, it sort of bothered me that they didn't really have an interest into these kind of things. And I used to send them articles and videos and whatnot about a lot of things in this aspect, but they used to barely take a look at it, or most of the times not watch. But when I came across the artworks he's been making and I started sharing those, putting up on my stories, the kind of responses I got, the best one was a friend of mine told me that he was able to distinguish MiG-29 from a Sukhoi, and that is something that he had never been able to do before. And that sort of brings me to an important point. Like, as civilians, we do respect our armed forces and everything, but we don't necessarily know a lot about them in terms of being factually correct about things. And what role do you think you can play in bringing out some sort of an awareness or some sort of an attention to these kind of things?
In particular, one aspect that I've been trying to push in particular has been to talk about the aircraft that aren't often photographed. For example, everyone knows the Rafale.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been all over our media for the past 3 years now.
Yeah.
But no one really talks about the tankers or the transport aircraft or the helicopters. And those, I mean, I'm just going to quickly explain it. Basically, the point is if the transport aircraft doesn't bring the spares to wherever the Rafale is based, that Rafale isn't flying.
Yeah.
And it can be the best aircraft in the world, but if it isn't flying, you aren't getting anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are various other aspects to it. So I actually, one of the things that I do want to bring out through my art and through my medium is I want to make that tanker, I want to make that transport aircraft look as cool or as sexy as as sexy as the Su-30. And then that hopefully will then, once you know what this aircraft is, because again, that art forces you, it attracts your attention, it forces you to look at it and think about why this aircraft is built the way it is. That I think will have long lasting impacts in terms of just exposure. It's just plain and simple exposure. If you don't know it exists, you won't ask questions about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But this kind of interest that you have, and you have a really unique point of view on things because you have been exposed to the armed forces part of the things and the civilian part of the things, because you aren't exactly in the armed forces. So you have a really unique point of view, which is something that I've realized from talking to you. How do you translate that from your art to your, how does it differ from, how do you see those two sides of the story? How does it depict from your art?
So coming from an armed forces background, that obviously, I mean, I pride myself on the fact that each of the pieces I depict are factually correct. Because, I mean, that's purely because I have the ability to find the operators or find the pilots or the engineers who work on that aircraft, show them my piece and say, just, is this correct? And more often than not, they come back to me and they say, or they get back to me and they say, this is wrong, that is wrong. The aircraft won't actually do this. This is not how we actually want to use it, and stuff like that. So that itself allows you to make factually correct things. When you make factually correct things, it's one of those small, weird intangibles that if you get it wrong, everyone notices. If you get it right, no one notices. But there's always something in the back of your mind that says, "Oh, you know what? There is something special about this. Something that does kind of set it apart." So that is definitely something. With regards to how you kind of blend that with the civilian side of things, is you get through college and through university and stuff, you end up interacting with a lot of other designers and a lot of other artists, and then they bring their points of view. And they obviously haven't grown up in a military background, so they have a very, very different way of looking at the same thing. For example, some of the pieces I made for this helicopter base in Bombay are I've drawn inspiration from church murals and stuff that you might have seen in the Sistine Chapel. And so it's kind of blending these two art forms together. It's effectively taking a piece that was meant for something else and trying to shoehorn an aeroplane in there and trying to make it work that way. So yeah, I mean, you're kind of drawing on your experiences of both sides of the.
So Angad, tell me, what's the best feedback that you've ever got on your art? Something that's like left you spellbound. I mean, you've been, wow, this was really worth my time.
I don't want to sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I personally
No, that's
think
not
that,
the intent, man. The intent is for you
no,
to
I
feel
understand, but
happy and proud of what you've done.
I personally feel like the best feedback that I will get will come in 30 years time, because a lot of the stuff that I've done, especially for, I mean, to a certain extent for Air Force aircraft, but primarily for naval aviation, has been depicting. So, sorry, for your viewers who might not know, I've depicted every single aircraft that the Navy has ever operated, ever flown. And these are all with accurate colors, accurate tail numbers, even the airframe's accurate, everything's accurate. So, and how did I achieve this accuracy? Is because I know the people who might have flown it. And now a lot of these gentlemen are now in their 80s and 90s. So this is probably 2021, 22 is probably amongst the last few times in our lifespans where you can access this wealth of information. Because unfortunately, a lot of this information isn't very well recorded or photographed. So you need to you need to talk to the physical person to get that, to extract that information out of them. And then I've turned that into art. So a lot of the art, while it just looks like a lot of flashy colors, has a lot of these small, small little clues, which I'm hoping that 30 years from now, when someone wants to research that aircraft or wants to talk about Indian art or Indian aviation or Indian naval aviation in particular, my stuff will pop up. And the fact that I have so thoroughly researched my own work will then allow it to become a tool for them to use well into the future.
Have you thought about commercial exhibitions?
Not so much. So on the way I've actually pretty much charted out my whole venture, which I call Non-Communist Mao, has primarily just been never say no. It's you start drawing. If someone says, "Hey, do you want to do this?" or "Hey, do you want to design this for us?" you just say yes. It can lead you to weird and wonderful places. Like Keyur had mentioned at the start of the interview, why I was in Russia is because I had started, there's this magazine called Vayu Aerospace and Defense Review.
Yeah.
They had liked my works. They asked me if I wanted to design covers for them. And then through the course of interacting with them, I guess they clearly liked something about my point of view on a lot of things. And they asked me if I wanted to represent them for a Navy show in Russia and to act as their traveling defense correspondent. So it just, you don't say no, and you can end up in a lot of weird and wonderful places.
That's
And
actually,
Looking at
I'm sorry,
organic
I don't
growth,
think I answered your question correctly, but
no, from what I've understood is that you don't say no, and you want to look at organic growth in terms of whatever is coming your way. That's the outcome
yeah.
that I've got
So
from this conversation.
there's also an aspect of before I started this, if you had gone up to anyone and said, especially I live in Bangalore right now. Bangalore is a city of startups. So I have a lot of other friends who everyone has an idea for their own startup or their own business model. So I'm quite confident that if you had approached anyone and said, I want to draw only aeroplanes and I want to draw only Indian aeroplanes and I will be able to monetize this, everyone would laugh you out of the door. So it just becomes a thing of, if you just do it and sometimes stick to your guns and you are good at what you do and your passion shows through your work, sometimes it can work in weird and wonderful ways.
No, but the important thing is that the passion should just come out. I mean, the commercial aspect of it, if it happens, all good. If it doesn't, also, it's just that at least you're doing something you
definitely.
like. Yeah, that's exactly what we want to promote on this channel, for people to follow their passion, to be one with themselves in terms of what they like doing. Keyur.
One thing Angad, I wanted to ask you, you just brushed upon the name of your venture, which is Non-Communist Mao. Could you tell us more about how exactly you landed up on this name? I mean, I get the Mao part of it, but it's quite creative. Tell us more about it, how you landed on
Does this stem from you telling everyone a yes? So that's why you don't have that thinking of saying a no. So that's why non-communist. I'm just taking a wild guess.
No, so it had actually started out from, like Keyur mentioned, Maolankar is my surname, which is probably a bit too long for people to keep saying. So often enough, our names are the surname is shortened to Mao. And I don't know about most other people, but if you say Mao to me, the first person that pops into my head is Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he is the communist Mao. So I'm the non-communist Mao, because my venture is purely capitalistic. Yeah. It's unique enough that people remember it. So
yeah, it's fairly unique.
It ticks all the boxes.
Yeah. Because of the name, when I came across your page on Instagram very initially, I wasn't really sure because of the quality of work and the page name. I wasn't really sure whether it's an Indian page or not. And it was quite interesting, the kind of conversations we have had. One thing I wanted to, you've done a lot of work, like you said, for Navy and a little bit of work for, I think, Air Force as well. You posted a post you put up a post on Instagram saying 2021 has been an interesting year from your art point of view. Could you tell us more about that?
So 2021 pretty much started with me having no idea where things are going because of the pandemic. And again, if you had to write your exams, the exams just keep getting postponed day after day, month after month. And someone randomly calls you up and says, hey, do you want to do a magazine cover? And I mean, you have to pinch yourself a little bit and you say, yeah, sure, why not? So you can go from being in a place of real self-doubt and not knowing what you're doing to doing magazine covers so I've pretty much done all the magazine covers for Vayu for this entire year.
Nice.
Then obviously the aforementioned writing a few articles for them as well. And then that in itself, once you've done a few magazines, so these magazines usually tend to end up in ships or in squadrons or in various military units all over the place. So that kind of gives you exposure in terms of the people who operate these platforms.
Mm-hmm.
They also obviously need art and they also appreciate the visual medium that Pranay had spoken to earlier.
Yeah.
So it kind of, I guess that's what piqued their interest. And for me, definitely one of the highlights of the year I think that this would be a highlight for any designer, would be if someone offers you a billboard, you say yes, you don't ask questions. So that was definitely, I mean, it was a little bit painful, and there was a lot of hard work that went into it. And I did want to, send really nasty emails to the printer, because the shades, I mean, it becomes really, really small things, but then if the shade of blue is slightly different than what you would imagine, then you kind of want to get after your printer. But
Yeah, I think.
yeah, so I mean, 2021 has just been.
Angad Kayur is your man to put you up on billboards. Yeah, that's what he does in advertising. I'm sure he has contacts. So you know where to go if you need to be featured on a billboard.
Definitely.
Just make a note of that, man.
This is your third pun of the video, by the way, Pranay. Just nobody's counting,
But that is your thing, huh? Well, I've got out of conventional advertising. You can still manage that. I have no contacts there now.
Yeah. Kind of, yes. Going ahead, what do you plan on doing? Because you're training to be, you're an aspiring pilot yourself, commercial pilot. You have your venture going on the side, and all these other things that you land up in because of not saying no. How do you plan to go ahead with that?
The plan is kind of to have no plan, in terms of I know which direction I want to head in, and I know it has to be something to do with airplanes, because that's pretty much what I wanted to do since I could walk and talk. I don't know. I hope that maybe I can fly, and in addition to that, also design on the side. And if someone wants to offer me a trip to Russia again, I'm not going to say no.
Mr. Putin, if you're listening, we are keen.
Exactly. We're keen, very keen.
Angad, tell me, I've just been very inquisitive to know, why not fighter pilot training? I mean, why commercial pilot? You tried for fighter pilot earlier? Or?
I personally actually haven't tried. I haven't written the SSB. I haven't written any of the ND exams. I haven't gone for an SSB, none of that. But that is what I've always wanted to do. Unfortunately, I think I got my glasses in 6th grade. And the minute you get your glasses, then all of that becomes a definite no-no. So you most definitely can still join the services if you have glasses. Unfortunately, if flying is a definite no. But you can fly commercially if you have glasses. So it then becomes a toss-up of you kind of have to pick what vertical you truly want to follow and what path you truly want to follow. And for me, rather selfishly, I think I want to fly. So however that comes about.
Nice.
What?
Go on. So what is it about flying that fascinates you, man?
So that is a question that I have been asked a few times in the past. I unfortunately haven't really been able to give anyone a good enough answer, or an answer that kind of like satiates their question. I really don't know how to describe it. So pretty much because of my background and all of that, I've practically always grown up around an airport. And so you're constantly hearing jet engines, and you're constantly, every time you look up, you see a different aircraft, right? And even where we used to live in Goa, on my way to school, you would have aircraft flying overhead, because that would just about skirt the runway. And if anyone's ever been to an air show, then they would know that the minute you feel that jet engine noise in your chest, it sinks its claws into your brain, and it just really doesn't let go. And then that becomes kind of like a slow burn where it's constantly there, and it is. I don't think that was a very good answer, but
but
it's become a thing of, it's never really been there really haven't been any other options for me, because for me it's just always been aeroplanes. So I personally haven't really sat down and thought about
But Angad,
sorry,
some answers don't need words actually to be answered. Your expression has actually summed it up. In terms of when I asked you that question, that delight that came on your face, that was reason enough as an answer, and words just supported it, man. So that's like really impressive.
Sorry, to actually speak to that passion as well, there was a little period after I finished my engineering where, so if anyone else has ever done engineering, they know that engineering maths is just hell. And it really didn't agree with me. I had always liked cooking and I thought MasterChef seemed pretty cool. So I thought I'd go and work in a kitchen for a bit. So just free tip for any of your listeners. It's not like MasterChef at all. It's a lot of really, really hard work. And I have a lot of respect for them. I unfortunately don't think I'm particularly cut out to work in that industry. And anyways, while all of that was happening, you're still constantly running out of the kitchen to look at an airplane every time it flies over. So I think the answer was always there as to what I wanted to really do.
Have you ever thought about cooking in the cockpit?
I think
marrying the two
might take my license away. The license which I don't have, but they will ban me straight away. So
you'll be grounded before you fly.
Exactly. That's a fate worse than death. So
what you've most of the people who are fascinated by aviation and these kind of things, movies play a big part in their life. Like for me, Top Gun is
definitely.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say Top Gun. I knew you were going to say Top Gun, and I have been waiting for Top Gun 2 to come out for so long, and they keep pushing it again and again. It is so frustrating.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating. So, but you've seen, for most of the people who haven't been personally, like physically exposed to that feeling of feeling the jet engine in your chest, like you said. But how having been on that side of the story, what role do movies play in your life? Do you still get fascinated by it? Are they accurate? Do you like, having known the finer details and nuances of the things, do you like look for, yaar, ye aisa nahi hona chahiye tha, this is not the right thing, or does it prick you? What kind of what role does movies play? Do movies play in your life?
So I will still watch the movie if it has an airplane in it, regardless of anything else. I think the other day there was this show on Netflix called Into the Night, which isn't a particularly good show, in my opinion. Okay. And basically, it's a show about the apocalypse. But the kicker is that they're flying in an airplane to fly away from the apocalypse. And that is the entire reason I sat and watched the entire show. Yeah. So there are a lot of movies that have a lot of inaccuracies that if anyone in the know will immediately be able to point to these inaccuracies and say this is incorrect and that's incorrect. But I think I'm just going to use Top Gun as an example. Top Gun is riddled with inaccuracies, and yet I think anyone who's interested in aviation will, if you say something bad about Top Gun, they will probably physically assault you. Because sometimes if you just have loud aircraft, fast aircraft, good-looking people, and rock music, I think you're kind of willing to overlook a lot of the other inaccuracies.
And practical effects, no CG, practical effects.
Exactly, that is one of the main things that.
Like there's a hint of realism to it.
Move away from that. Oh, most definitely, because it's real aircraft doing real things, and you can. I mean, I've seen a lot of, especially on YouTube, you come across a lot of these CGI videos where the aircraft's flying like this, and 30 seconds later is doing that, and like that's not happening.
It's physics rolling in its grave.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's been I've been meaning to talk to you since a long time, dude. And I don't know how to thank you enough for coming on our podcast. And on such a day like the Republic Day, I mean, looking at the 75 aircraft do the flyby, it was quite visceral. How did you feel about it? Which was your favorite formation of the Republic Day parade?
So I am 100% biased. I've never tried to hide my bias. It's always been naval aviation through and through. So it has to be the MiG-29K and P-8I. Which incidentally, the Doordarshan people call the P81.
P81, yeah.
Which was fun. Yeah.
But I was confused for a
Sorry,
second.
that's no. Sorry, to circle back, that's actually a very good reason of why you need art and why you need to
Exactly.
why it needs to show up on people's Instagram profiles. Because the minute it says P8I and it's the
Yeah,
I with the little
daughter.
bindi on top, it'll like sink into someone's head and no one will mistake it for a one anymore.
Yeah. Because I'd been calling it P8I ever since I've known about it. And then Doordarshan during the parade called it P81. And I just started questioning myself. Have I been factually incorrect about it? And then I decided I'll ask you whether it's correct or not. How come there was no I think we had a small conversation about this. What was the reason behind Tejas not being in the 75 planes, being a part of that formation or any formation at all?
I think the official reasoning behind it is that they don't want a single engine aircraft as part of the flyover, especially if you have a large number of people packed into a relatively small, dense location. Then I think it's largely just for safety reasons.
Okay.
A lot of people have tried to look at it through this weird political lens, but I think it's just safety.
But safety in what sense? Like, does it have some sort of a? Is there any physics involved? What do you mean when you say safety?
So I'm going to tread very carefully because this is a topic that
of course, yes.
can be potentially contentious. But the basic logic is that if it's a multi-engine aircraft and you have an engine failure, you still have another engine to get you out of there. Whereas in the single engine aircraft, if you have an engine failure, engine failures can occur for multiple reasons. It can be,
of course,
especially over the populated areas that have a lot of food and stuff, they tend to attract birds and pigeons. And if you've ever been to Delhi and if you've ever looked at the president's house, then you know there are pigeons everywhere. So I mean, if a jet engine eats a pigeon, it's not good news. So I think it's largely just to
avoid
stay wary of that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I mean, they do, however, make exceptions occasionally. I think I forget which year exactly. It was either 2018 or 2019 that they had the LCA flyover. And again, it was either 1984 or 1986 that they had the single engine Sea Harrier also take part in.
Oh, okay.
Either the parade or beating the retreat. Again, I'm not entirely clear on the facts.
Sure. Anyway, it's been an amazing episode today. Angad, thanks a lot for coming. Thanks a lot for just saying yes, not saying no. When I asked you if you'd be willing to do a podcast,
I don't know anyone who would say no. I mean, everyone. I think everyone secretly deep down loves to talk about themselves. So I don't think anyone would say no.
That sort of plays into our advantage when I've up until now, whoever we have asked, they've been really graceful enough to just show up and talk about whatever they like. And it's been really amazing to talk to all of the people who have come on the podcast. And you also, because like you, I've said it multiple times to you on the long Instagram chats we've had last year. And I come to you with queries and questions, and you very patiently type out each and every answer and give very proper in-depth analysis of the things. And it's really amazing to finally have a conversation with you in person. And thank you for doing that.
I mean, I had to if I want to get billboards out of you in the future, then
yeah, you do. Yes.
You can totally enter into a barter, man. You give you patience, he'll give you billboards.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Angad, my last question to you is, what's coming out from Angad next year in terms of art?
In terms of art, I really don't have an answer for you. It's very, like I said, if you just don't say no, if you keep getting random people saying, hey, do you want to draw this for us? Hey, do you want to draw that for us? Then you never know where you can end up.
Nice.
Looking forward to looking at whatever you're going to be doing in the future. I hope there are a lot of art pieces in the work, enough to keep your Instagram feed populated throughout the year, and enough to go on a lot of billboards also.
I mean, you can also, I mean, I'm always open to suggestions. I'm always open to feedback from.
Sure. So looking at the experts right now. In the
No, especially since both of you work in this marketing and advertising field, I
Sure.
think you would also know what works better and what what people seem to associate with and what just what works
But
better.
Angad, I must tell you one thing on feedback. If you're passionate about something, the thing is that never try to change that in terms of whatever feedback you're getting. There's constructive feedback and there's feedback. So in your passion, just be very cognizant of what's constructive and what's not. Because people have a habit of giving feedback just for giving feedback also. So like never dilute your passion when it comes to feedback. That's all I have to say.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. I mean, but to get to the good feedback, you kind of have to listen to everything.
Yeah.
So.
Because people love giving feedback, man. Believe you me, I've been in the industry for 12 years.
I feel like it's a particularly Indian thing to be like, beta ye kar do.
No, I think it's a universal thing, yeah. That is one thing that comes naturally to us to give feedback. So, but anyway, man, it was great to have you, Angad, and Keyur. Give a good parting message for Angad.
I'm just in awe today. I'm just really happy to have finally spoken to him in person. Angad, do you have any parting message for our viewers?
Sorry to put you on the spot. Told me this, and I would have thought about this ahead of time, but I unfortunately don't have anything to say.
But your experience, how's your experience
been?
Aeroplanes
are cool. Sorry, I just thought of it. I'm going to end with aeroplanes are cool. I think everyone will agree with that.